my daughter Heather and my son Will were living here, and my best friend Doug was living here, and my sister Julie was all living here. And during this time, we would all use the side door. And in order to get to my bedroom from that side door, you would enter the side door, which was where it's on a cul-de-sac, and that's where the kind of where the driveway is, and you go up a little walkway. You enter that side door, and you walk through the kitchen, and then the first room you're going to get to is the kids' bedroom, or one of the kids' bedroom. Then you walk down the hall a little bit, and you pass this huge atrium that is in the center of the house. And then you walk by it, and you pass the entry where the front door is. And then you walk by it, and you get to my bathroom. And then my bedroom is connected onto that bathroom. And so my bedroom's the last room on this side of the house. And this is where this all takes place. So in January of 2011, it's late at night, and I always watch TV before I go to bed. And I had come in here, I had gotten ready for bed, put on my pajamas, was watching TV. And I always keep my doors closed for privacy. And all of a sudden I hear a noise at the door going into the hallway. Not to the bathroom, but into the hallway. And I'm like, what is that? It's late, everybody else is asleep. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm thinking, well, is it the dog? We have a lot of animals. I'm like, is it the pig? Is it the dog? Or is it the bird that got out or something? And it happens again. And I'm like, oh, no. And I look around, and actually the dog is, one of the dogs is in here with me, and the other dog would have been in there with the kids, I'm guessing. And so all of a sudden, the lock unlocks, and nobody has keys to this bedroom but me. And it unlocks, and the door opens about 2 inches. And right when that happens, I get this overwhelming presence. Like, so hard to believe. Oh my gosh. And so, like, you're almost gasping for air. It's so thick. Imagine being in the most humid place you can be, and just, if you've ever done that, or imagine being in the shower that you stayed in forever, that kind of breathing quality, or out in the 110 degree temperatures, where it's humid, and it's just unbelievable. And that is what was so overwhelming. But not only that, I got this negative, horrified feeling about whatever just entered the room. Now, I've always been an intuitive, a sensitive, and I can see them, what I call spirits, them, and they never look like people. People always think they saw someone, or they could see, and they took human form. The way I've always seen them, that's never the case. They're like a big cloud that you cannot see through, but they take different forms. They might be round, they might be zigzaggy, they might be tubular. And the tubular ones, they tend to be the strongest. So imagine, having a test tube, right? A huge test tube, like a 5-foot test tube or a 6-foot test tube. And imagine that smoke is all in that, okay? That is what these spirits look like. And you can't see through them. They're a very, very thick fog, or a very thick smoke, but they move constantly inside this tubular form. So they're constantly moving, like a cloud or smoke would move. And that's how I see them. That is how I can see them directly. And anyway, I knew, because it was tubular form and probably, 5 or 6 feet in height. I was just terrified. And I've seen them before, but I've never had this huge negative feeling about it. And in this case, I did. And I have been a paranormal investigator since 83. So I'm maybe even 82. So I'm kind of giving my age away here. And I've never been afraid of anything. I don't care what it is. I've never been afraid of any type of spirit or any kind of paranormal type thing. Humans are always my worry, not paranormal things. But in this case, I was terrified. I was just frozen. And I could almost hear it, like almost like footprints, but it's carpet in here. So it's, it's hard to imagine you're hearing it, but I basically could. And as it gets to the bed, it sits down on the bed, and it makes this huge indentation, like a 300-pound person would if they were to sit down on a bed, right? And it sits there. And because of the experience I've had in the past, I know I can't outrun them. I mean, it's just going to make them mad. If you try to outrun them, they're going to, oh my gosh, they're so fast, you can't do anything about it. So I just kind of sat there, and it sat there a few minutes, didn't say anything, and all of a sudden it says, you need to reverse the locks on the bathroom door. And I just thought, what does that mean? Like, what, you mean this spirit just shows up, terrifies me, and this is all it says to me? And it sits there a few more minutes, so I don't say anything. And it says it again. And I finally am like, okay, I'm terrified. I'm just frozen. And I'm like, okay, I will. All right, I get you. And at that time, you can see that it stands back up, and I'm seeing this form again, because the form will go in and out. So when it had walked through the door, the form would disappear a little bit, then it would come back. But as it's on the bed, it's remaining in this tubular form that I could actually see. So when it gets up and the bed goes back to its normal shape, and it begins to exit the door, and again it goes invisible again, and it gets through the doors, from my guess, and then the door, that 2 inches that was open, it closes back to how it originally was. And I jump up and I run in there to my kids and to Doug and Julie. I'm like, something's here, I don't know what it is, and it's just horrible, and I'm just like terrified. And Doug's like, oh my gosh, what have you been drinking? What have you been doing? Go back to bed, oh my gosh. And my kids are like, whatever, Mom, oh my God, like, what are you doing back there, but my sister knew I'm not afraid of anything. And she knew I've done this a long time. I've been a paranormal investigator so long. And she's like, it's just not like her to worry about something. So, everybody goes back to bed, and I'm up all night, terrified. Well, a few days go by, and I'm just like, okay, just kind of things go back to normal. Several days go by, and I never did what it told me to do. Second time. One night, I'm sitting back in my room. It's probably about 2 a.m., and I'm a night owl, and I'm watching, TV, and I hear the same noise at the door again. And I knew then, I didn't even have to question it. I knew, oh my God, it's back. It is back. What is it going to do to me? And it unlocks the door again, it opens the door, and it gets back in here. And once again, it sits in the same spot, sits back down. This time it stays for quite a while, doesn't say anything, it just sits there. And I'm looking at that indentation, and how heavy this was. And they obviously use a form of gravity and energy to do something, to make an indentation like that. Because how would something like that have any weight, right? How could something be invisible that appears to have some kind of smoke form have that kind of weight to put indentation in the bed like that? I mean, at this time I weigh about 105 pounds, and there is no way I can get an indentation near that close. It's not going to happen. So it sits there a few minutes, and it says, Laura, You didn't do what I asked, and I'm telling you again, you need to reverse the locks on that bedroom to bathroom door. Go over there and reverse the locks on the bathroom door. And again, I told him I will, I'll do it. And it stays there a few more minutes before it finally, and it never says anything else. Oh, and how I hear them is not through my ears. Anytime I hear these things, being an anybody that's intuitive or a sensitive or even a psychic, they'll know what I'm talking about when I say you don't hear them through your ears. And it's not like a thought process, because everybody thinks to themselves. It's not like that. You actually hear it in a telepathic form, and you hear it. And that is how I hear any of these things. And it doesn't. And I carry a medical license. Okay, I'm a therapist. I'm not schizophrenic, and I question everything because I don't believe in most of what I say. Not what I say. Sorry, what I see. And I usually say I don't believe in anything. I usually have a reasonable explanation for whatever happens. Whatever I might witness. And anyway, so at this point it leaves. It had gone back out the door. And once again, I get back up and I race in there and I wake everybody up and I'm like, oh my God, it came back. And my kids are like, Mom, I have school in the morning. What in the world are you doing? And Doug's like, I got to be at work at 7 a.m. Why are you waking me up? And he's like, what in the world is going on? He's like, are you drinking? What are you doing? Are you watching too many weird shows? And at this point, after it came the first time, I loved the horror films. I loved the crime shows and like unsolved mysteries and that kind of thing. We didn't have a lot of ghost shows out yet at that point. I think Ghost Hunters was out maybe, but for that, I don't really think much else was. And I would not have woken him up if something real wasn't happening. My sister, on the other hand, she knew what is going on, and she's getting a little bit worried at this time, going, Laura's not going to just imagine this. She's seen too much, she's done too much. And I'm always the one called in to solve problems like this, right? So she was a little bit worried, and I was up again the whole night, and I think the next night too. But a few more days went by, and things calmed down, and I kind of got back into my schedule, and I never, did what it asked. I never reversed the locks on the bathroom door. Well, about a week or so later, a huge noise, and about 3 a.m. at this point, comes from that door going into the hallway. And I even have like one of those bars, right, that stick in the door, one of the bars. Because I had gone and put one of the bars in there at this point. And this thing gets by all of that. It unlocks the door, and then a couple of inches of the door open, and comes back in, and I can barely breathe. It is so overwhelming in this room. But the negative presence, I get when I see some of this, or when I have these, when people call me out and we have these issues go on, and we're out to solve problems or help people that are going through different things or might think they have something. Sometimes I will get a little bit of the air quality changing, but never ever like this. And nor do I get feeling so, I was just like, what kind of demon is this? Is this the devil? This is a demon so powerful, or how many demons are there? In this house, there's not demons. I've always known they were here. There's somewhere between 7 and 10 different spiritual beings in here. I don't know what they are. But I always knew things were here. but I've never seen this one. I've never encountered this particular one before. And I just go on and on explaining this part to try to tell you how just horrible this feeling was. I mean, it's just like you see an evil person coming at you with, and they're coming at you, they have a knife or whatever, going to attack you. It's that kind of feeling, right? It's that feeling that your life is threatened. And it sits back down and it says, Laura, you will reverse the locks on the bathroom doors. And you will do that tonight. And by this time, I'm like, I'll do it as soon as you leave. Okay, I'll do it. As soon as you leave, I'll do it. I promise. And it continues to sit there for another, 7 or 8 minutes. And I'm getting very, very antsy at this time. And it's freezing in here. I have all these blankets because I'm sitting in the bed here. And I'm covered up in blankets, and I am just still freezing. And I also have an electric blanket as well. But I'm freezing, okay? And then granted, it's January. The heaters are on. No, by then it's February. Sorry. It's February by then. And the heaters are on. And I just can't, I'm just chilled to the bone. And I do tell it, I will, can you please leave? I promise I'll do it. I can't stand this. It finally decides it's going to get up and leave. And it goes to the doors again. And then I could see that it closed the door again. And it left, And immediately I got up and I ran back in there. And then once again, I woke everybody up. And this time they're looking at me, and I guess there's something about me that they know I'm not lying. This time they're like, she's really seen something. Something is really here. There's a problem. So Doug gets the screwdriver. We get the screwdriver and we change out the lock. We reverse it where now the bedroom door has the ability to lock and no longer does the bathroom door. And they go back to bed, I guess. Not me. I'm terrified all night. And I just kind of watch TV the rest of the night. And I'm terrified for a couple days after that. Then a week or so go by and nothing happens. And by then I'm kind of calming down and things are going back to normal, for the most part. And one, I believe it was either Friday or Saturday night, I can't exactly remember. We were all planning to go out to a local bar that had one of our favorite bands playing. It's still playing today, actually. And everybody was gathering at the house here. Now, I was engaged to a guy in Australia. And I was, fully dressed and all. I was put on my makeup. And I went and I had him on Skype. And I put the computer down on the toilet, and from the toilet in the bathroom, he could see the door from the bathroom to the hallway, and he could see the door from the bedroom to the bathroom. So he's kind of cornered there as I'm talking to him, I'm putting on my makeup, and we're all fixing to go out. He had already, I think come here not that long ago, but had to go back to Australia and was coming back out. And so we were sitting there talking, and I knew they were all in the kids' room, which would be the first room by the side door. And they were all playing video games. And I hear this knocking on the door, and I was like, y'all, I'm getting ready. I'll be out in a few minutes. I have till 7 o'clock. It wasn't 7 o'clock yet, right? And nobody answered. And I was like, man, and I just thought, well, we had other people coming to meet us here too, not just the people that were living here. And I thought, oh, well, they've gotten here early and they're wondering where I am. And a knock happens again. And I'm like, I'll be out in a few minutes. I'm putting on my makeup. I'll be out in a few minutes. And then finally, it just starts banging, on the door. And I open it up, and it's my ex-husband Reuben Teams, right? And he's standing there with 2 guns aimed at me. And I'm like, being in Texas, right? And I didn't part with him in bad, war or any kind. We weren't in a fight. I had divorced him 11 years prior to this. This was on February the 26th, 2011. I divorced him 11 years about prior to this. And we all have guns, and I'm like, oh, you got 2 new guns, cool. You here to show me your guns. Nice. What kind are they? And I'm not thinking anything in the world on this. And he goes, I'm here to kill you and then myself. And I am like, and my fiance can see this from, as he's watching on Skype, he can witness, he's witnessing this. And he's like, Laura, get out of there. And I kind of look up, and my ex-husband, Reuben, his eyes were black. The whole eye was black. There were no whites, just black, solid eyes, right? And at that point, he grabs me, and he wanted to make sure I was tortured and gone through a lot before he finished this job off, right? And a physical fight broke out. Now, he outweighs me by 100 pounds or more, actually way more than 100 pounds, and he outstands me by a foot. He's close to 6'4", and he's throwing me around like a rag doll. I mean, I'm getting thrown into walls and dog cages and thrown into the bed, and he would just be like, you're going to get a certain pillow and you're going to lay on the bed, and I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill myself. And this wasn't sexual. It wasn't anything like weird like that. This was some kind of psychotic, something weirder than you could ever imagine. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to comply with that. I'm not going to obey you on anything. I'm not the type to ever. None of us are. And so we get into this huge, physical fight. Now, by this time, I was yelling, and Doug and Heather had ran in here. My fiance was calling the city of North Richland Hill. He was calling 911 to tell them what is going on. And Reuben had 2 guns, and he had 1 gun on me, and he had 1 gun on my daughter and Doug. And, I kind of quit fighting, and I was just like, when they came in here, I was just like, oh my God, I'll comply. Just let them go. Just let them go. I'll do what you say. Just let her out. Just let Doug get her out. And that was very shocking to me, because Reuben cared very, very much for my daughter, who was his stepdaughter. He was very close to her. And I thought, never in my wildest dreams would he ever threaten her or pull a gun out on her. That's the last person ever I thought he would. And he decided once, after me begging for a while, and telling him I would comply, he finally let them go. And so they were able to escape and get out that side door, wherever they went. And, by this time, we had 2 cities of cops. There were probably 30 official people here between your fire department, your cops. I believe at this time they might have even had an ambulance coming in. I mean, they wouldn't have had them right here. They would have been down the road on there. But the city of North Richland Hills was here, and Haltom City were all here. And they were breaking out all the front windows all along the entire house to get a shot at him. But they never could. The curtains were in their way, the blinds, and he just was not and he might have been aware of it, I guess, and he was making sure, that he couldn't be. And then also, you had us in a physical fight going off. And so after he let Heather out, he throws me, he gets me, throws me on top of the bed, and he goes, you're gonna, and at this time, I couldn't really do that much. I mean, he was overpowering me, and he aims the first gun at me, and he's only about 2.5 feet away from me. I was all the way against the headboard, and he was at the edge of a king-size bed. And he pulls the trigger. Well, the gun misfired. And I knew he's got that second gun, and he's fixing to raise it up, and I'm done. And so I just thought so quickly, I've got to throw him off his center of gravity. So I took my whole body and I lunged at his ankles from off the bed, and I was able to throw him off his center of gravity. And I was able to get through all the way to the bathroom, and I was almost able to get into the hall when he caught me there and was able to pull me back. And he once again, threw me back in there, and a big physical fight started up again. And he finally ended up shooting me, and he shot me in my leg, in the calf area. But it wasn't enough to take me down. And I have this huge 1,200-pound gun safe. It sits in a room. And it never works. For me to get in that gun safe with the combination part, I'm like back and forth, and it's always like off a number or something. And I usually spend like 15 minutes if I really have to get into this thing, right? And anyway, so that's on the right side of the bedroom. And I had put the guns up because we were leaving town. I mean, not leaving town. We were leaving out for the night. And I had put the guns up. And before any of this had happened. And so he's throwing me around everywhere, and then in this physical fight still, and he shoots me again. And this time, he got me bad. He blew up, completely blew my leg at the tibia. And I looked down, and I couldn't even feel it. With that kind of adrenaline, I looked down, and it's just gone. I'm seeing the bone and everything. It's actually separated. But I can't feel it, and I'm still trying to fight this fight, right? And I'd try to get back up, and of course I'd fall over because, with muscle memory, it's kicking in as this muscle memory till your brain can finally override it and go, hey, I can't do that. I'm going to have to use the rest of my body to do something. And so finally, I was just like, I don't know what to do. I give up. What can I do? He's now in totally control of me. And so I drop down on my one knee, and I start praying, and I start saying the Lord's Prayer, and I take my entire attention off him, and I turn my eyes away from him completely, and I go down into a prayer, saying the Lord's Prayer. And it angers him. It angers him so bad that no longer does he have my attention. That bit of control is gone. My attention is now on the Lord. And everything I care about now is the Lord and my soul, And as I'm down, he's trying to pull me up. And he's like, get up. I'm not listening to any of the crap. You're not going to say any of that crap. He's just irate. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice. And again, I can't hear it with my ears, but I can hear it. And it says, get up. You're going to win this fight, but you have to figure out how you're going to win this fight. It couldn't tell me. Maybe it didn't know how I was going to win this fight. It just said I would, but I'd have to fight to win this fight. So I got back up. Now, during all this time, at the time all this was going on, this physical fight was going on, all the neighbors, everybody in our subdivision, we have a homeowners, everybody's close to everybody. They've been here for years. And my mother lived across the street. And they were all gathering up over at her house. And they had gotten all the kids down at her house, and my son, I think they had brought him over. He had been at a friend's that night, and I think that They had brought him over by that time that night. And they all, from what I'm told, they all started praying. All of them got together and they started praying. And I'm talking an overwhelming amount of people got together that night. And when I was kneeling down and I was saying the Lord's Prayer, and that being came to me and said, "Get up, you're going to win this fight," I could feel this energy, not my energy, but an energy that came from somewhere else. It's almost like it picked me up, right? You could almost feel it picking me up. I mean, I don't know where it came from until later after I talked to everybody, and then I knew where it came from, right? It came from those prayers and that faith that everybody had. And as I got up, and an energy that I had never knew that I ever existed in me. And by this time, my adrenaline probably, and I was bleeding too. Being medical, I just thought, now I got to back it up a little bit. At one point, I was able to get into my drawer, grab a t-shirt, and make a tourniquet out of that shirt around my leg. So, but still, by logic, I was like, how am I able to do this? Well, no, I got to revert. Hold on. I hadn't made the tourniquet yet, okay? But when I was down and he had me down, I hadn't been able to make the tourniquet yet. So I was like, how long am I going to be able to sustain between the adrenaline about to be gone and, and the blood loss? I just thought, I'm going to pass out any minute, right? But all of a sudden that energy came over, and I was given that energy, and I was able to just get up and start wailing at him, just start fighting back like I have never fought anybody on one leg. But during this fight, I was able to get him close enough to that bathroom door, and he kind of fell back. And at that point, I was able to grab that door and lock that door where that spirit had told me to reverse those locks on that bathroom door. So at that time, like I said, the cops were all breaking out the front windows, and somehow my sister had gotten by the cops, and she somehow got in the house, and Reuben liked my sister. He really cared for my sister, and she is a gentle soul. She's always happy. She's always joking around. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. She doesn't have that aggression, no meanness at all. And she's like, "Hey, Reuben, what are you doing? What's going on?" And she's like, "Hey, Reuben, are you okay?" And she's kind of redirecting this. And that kind of bought me time to start getting up and figuring out, how am I going to get to my guns? Now, the shotgun was in the closet, but I knew logically, something just told me I can't get the shotgun. I'm not going to be able to carry it. I'm not going to be able to fire it. And he still has two weapons this time, obviously, he had fixed his weapon. I'll tell you that in a minute. But the one it misfired. So I went over to the safe, and for the first time ever, the safe opened immediately. And I was able to get a .40 caliber gun out of the safe. Didn't touch the shotgun, but then my clip was all the way around the other side of this king-size bed. And I hopped around, this bed. And at that point was when I went and I grabbed the t-shirt out of the drawer, made a tourniquet, because by then I can't even believe I was still not passed out, to be honest. And I grabbed the gun, and the clip, and I hopped back over to where this corner that I initially told y'all about, so that if he came back in the bathroom door, I could, position myself and fire on him that way. If he came back through the bedroom, I had the other corner and the other wall to protect me. So you have the right wall protecting me if he came through the bathroom, the left wall, if that were your hand, protecting me to if he came back through the hallway to the bedroom. And he had gone, I guess from what I'm told later, he had gone to lock all the exterior doors. There's 4 doors he would have had to lock to keep the police out. I guess he thought, well, if Julie can get in, then the police are now going to be able to get in. They're going to come through those doors. And I guess he thought in his mind, well, Laura's down. She can't do anything. I've already blown her leg to bits. But he didn't realize I was able to get to those guns. So when he came back, my current fiance was watching again all this from Skype while on that computer was positioned on the toilet, and I hear him yelling out, "He's back." And that I knew then he was coming through the bathroom door, so I hid behind the other wall protecting me, but at the same time I was positioned that when he kicked in or got in that door, I was going to fire upon him. And sure enough, he shot the door and he kicked it in, and I fired upon him. I hit him dead center in the chest, and he dropped down, and instead of stopping, he picked up the gun and he got right back up and he started coming at me. And I shot him again, dead center in the chest. And he dropped back down and he got the gun again, black eyes completely this whole time, and he just keeps coming at me like the Terminator. And I shot him again, and I took out of his liver this time. From what I'm told, that shot was the liver. And he drops down again, and he keeps coming at me again. He picks out the weapon again, and I fire on him again. Now at this point, after this 4th shot, he starts trying to escape. Now he decides, that, he wants to live, now that I have the upper hand. Now he now is on the defense, and now I'm on the offense. And I start hopping after him, and he makes it, all the way through the bathroom to another 5 or 6 feet. He's trying to run down the hall that's perpendicular to the hall I told you about initially. And he drops about 5 or 6 feet down in that hall. And I'm over him, and I'm like, and his gun falls next to him. I'm not about to go get close enough because he would be able to grab my feet, my one leg, right? I'm not going to be able to get away. So if he picks that gun up again, I already knew I had let out so many rounds. I've got one gun on me with, 9 rounds basically total. And I didn't know, I didn't count how many I had already let off. So I decided to finish him off. I decided I'm done with this. It's me or him. And nobody's come in. The cops are not going to come into a situation like that. SWAT was evidently called on something else at the time. And we're not here yet. I mean, we're talking 15, 20 minutes in here, and SWAT is not here. It is only left up to the city cops to handle this at the time that do not do this. Nowadays, the training is very different. Back then, no, they don't do this. They don't come into cases like this. If you're going to live, you better hope you have your own weapon. And the only thing that will even the odds is a weapon. You cannot overpower somebody with a knife. A female with a male that outweighs them by 100 pounds is not going to be able to fight them. They're not going to be able to overpower them if they have a knife or any blunt object like a baseball bat or something, it's not going to happen. And so I decide, I'm not going to risk it. And I try to fire up on him again, and I'm out of rounds. My rounds are out. So I hop back in the room really quick, and at this time I grab my rifle, and I grabbed a carbine rifle, and I hop back in there, and I have the rifle on him, and I can't debate, am I going to should I just go ahead and release the next 50 rounds on him? Well, no, I'm not out here to kill him. I'm out here to stop him, right? And because now I have a weapon on him, if he grabs for that weapon again, I'm going to take him out. And I grab the phone at this time, and I call the city, and I'm like, hey, call 911. I'm like, you can tell him you can come in now. You can, and the cops at this point, they don't want to come in because by now I won't drop my weapons. There's no way in the world I'm going to drop my weapon. And I'm like, no, you need to come get him out of here. And until I see that you have him, I'm not going to drop my weapon. And so this now became a short little standoff between us. And I would never drop my weapon. But my son's best friend, his father is a sergeant. And they knew me, and they knew I'm not out to hurt anyone. I'm out to survive. And they were just so angry. I mean, the cops were so angry at Reuben. Everybody was just so ultimately angry at him. And they decided to come on in, that they had to trust that I wasn't going to do anything stupid. And they got him, and I dropped the gun at that point after they had him. And he ends up, he does end up living. He ends up in a coma for about a year. And and is what's so sad is during all this time, victims, nobody's allowed to know their medical status. And it's so wrong that a criminal's rights who did this to you, that their HIPAA rights are protected over your rights. Because these poor kids would have to sleep on the floor in my bedroom for months because nobody could officially tell us what his medical status was. We were clueless. We had no idea. The only way I would get my information was from people that knew both of us, that were friends with him, that were friends with me, and some of actually his friends that really didn't even know me that well, that knew who I am, that actually decided they were going to release the information because after what he did, they just couldn't justify being associated with him or support him. And when I would just come, if I ran into him somewhere, I would come directly out and say, I need you to let me know his status. These kids, we can't live this way anymore. And they would end up telling me, he's in a coma, he's not going to be able to get back at you. Is all the cops or the attorney could tell me is, he's not going to be able to get you right now. That's the most I could get, And then I always had to be like, is he going to have somebody else to get me? Does he have somebody else, that, is he awake enough? Is he coherent enough to actually be able to call in somebody else that maybe might act upon his favor, And that was always in the back of my mind. And which never happened, but we did get some really weird letters. In fact, to this day, I do not have a mailbox. I do not allow the mail. I do not get any kind of mail because we would get some stuff in the mail that was not that was threatening. Just because weirdos do that. I don't know. They don't know them. They don't know me. They're just weirdos, and I don't know. They just find out stuff through media or whatever. And so, anyway, he was in a coma over a year. And when we finally went to trial, we were the oldest case in Tarrant County that had not gone into a trial. We had the worst attorney that ever existed, ever. Instead of going to trial, he finally would say, well, we don't want to go to trial. It's going to be too hard to prove. Well, how is it that hard to prove when 30 cops witnessed it and all these people witnessed it? He was just lazy and did not want to do his job. Well, anyway, and I look back, and don't ever let an attorney talk you out of things like that. Don't ever. You always stand your ground, and I wish I would have. But I did go on to be the witness used in the stand your ground laws in Texas to pass our stand your ground rights back in 2012. And I tell this story to churches and, media sources and in-services, city events, crime victim events. I tell this story all the time. And the one thing that I'll always never forget is this being. And it dawned on me, a little while later, that this being wasn't negative, that the message this being was bringing was so ultimately negative that is where this feeling came from. So the spiritual being, I don't believe he's ever left. I think he's always around with the rest of them. He's probably the most powerful of almost all of them that are here. And I don't know what they all do here. It almost seems like some of them fight with each other too, by the way. And that will come within more stories I tell you. And videos, I have proof of it all. There's videos of this. And all of this is all the story I've told you is all can be researched. It's documented. And so as I realized this being was just bringing in the message that was so negative, that's why I felt that way. And anyway, so when we end up going to court, and I do the impact statement, the victim's impact statement. So we didn't go to court to trial, but we did the victim statement. He comes in, and he walks in, and he looks better than he ever has in a long time. And I couldn't believe it, because here I am believing he can never get to me, ever hurt us again, that he had been in a coma and he was so damaged between both lungs collapsed, his liver taken out, and the liver taken out will forever cause him issues. But he's still capable, and he sits down in this impact statement, and he just stares at me the entire time. He doesn't blink or anything, And I'm backing up the story a little bit. When I was shot that night, and I was taken up to the hospital, I was not allowed to talk to Doug or the kids or my sister or even my fiance, who was telling him everything. It was in Australia, the one watching all this. And the one thing that is in that we told, and I'm assuming it's in the reports, I've never asked for the report, is the one thing all of us had told all the police is that his eyes were solid black. Okay? Every one of us in separate reports before we ever spoke to each other told him his eyes were black. And so during this impact statement, I'm sitting there, and this impact statement's years after this event, right? It took it that long to have all this happen. And he looks up at me, and he's staring, and he just stares at me through all of this, which I had to be up there at least 20 minutes. The judge let me continue my impact statement a long time, which was really nice of him. And as he's looking at me, at one point, his eyes change just towards me, and how he's looking at me is, when I get out of here, I'm coming back after you. And this time, you won't get away. And you could just read, I couldn't hear it or anything, but I could read it in his face. I knew what he was saying. I knew in the look that he was giving me as he was just staring at me.